एग्जामिनेशन की प्रिपरेशन अगर आप इंग्लिश मीडियम में करना चाहते हैं देन यू आर एट द राइट प्लेस. चेंज द मीडियम फॉर यूपीएससी इज द नेम ऑफ द चैनल. डू सब्सक्राइब द चैनल एंड शेयर अमंग ऑल द हिंदी मीडियम एस्पिरेंट्स. देखिए, अगर हिंदी मीडियम एस्पिरेंट्स हैं आप और आपने मीडियम को चेंज करना चाहते हैं, हिंदी मीडियम से इंग्लिश मीडियम में शिफ्ट करना चाहते हैं, जिससे कि आपके सिलेक्शन के चांसेस डेफिनेटली इंक्रीज होंगे, एनहांस होंगे, राइट. सो नाउ वन ऑफ द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन दैट मस्ट बी कमिंग टू योर माइंड इज दैट इज इट रियली पॉसिबल टू चेंज द मीडियम फ्रॉम हिंदी मीडियम टू इंग्लिश मीडियम डिस्पाइट हैविंग स्टडीड फ्रॉम द फर्स्ट क्लास टू द इंटरमीडिएट और इवन टू द ग्रेजुएशन थ्रू आउट इन हिंदी मीडियम. Is it still really possible to change the medium from Hindi medium to English medium for UPSC? Yes, the answer is yes. It is 100% possible. What one needs to do in order to change the medium? एक एस्पिरेंट को क्या करने की ज़रूरत है जो कि हिंदी मीडियम से इंग्लिश मीडियम में आप शिफ्ट कर सकते हैं. आप ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा इंग्लिश को सुनने की कोशिश करिए. ट्राई लिसनिंग मोर एंड मोर थिंग्स इनटू इंग्लिश, राइट. अब ये जैसे ये न्यूज़पेपर है, राइट. सो दिस इज द एडिटोरियल ऑफ द हिंदू, राइट. सो दिस पर्टिकुलर एडिटोरियल इज गोइंग टू बी टॉकिंग अबाउट द चाइना's world view and how it postulates. Postulates means how it thinks, what it believes basically, what kind of theories China believes to be true for itself, and what it believes that okay, whatever the China is believing for itself, and it wants the entire world should also believe that, right. So this is what calls the postulation or the right. So if you listen things fully into English, right, the moment you start listening your mind will get wired, right, and you will start reflecting a little bit more on English, right. So your fear of English will slowly start diminishing, right, or declining, right, or it will sometimes after it will just get deleted, right. So the more you listen to English, the better your listening skills would be, the better your fear managing capacity would be. And और जनरल स्टडीज का जो पेपर होता है आपका सीसैट का पेपर होता है, राइट. सो दोस 40 क्वेश्चंस, ऑलमोस्ट 40 to 42 क्वेश्चंस कम्स इन दी सीसैट सिविल सर्विसेज एप्टीट्यूड टेस्ट, राइट, where the reading comprehension or the unseen passages, right, what we call them. So if you are listening to things into English, if you know that how to read, because I'll be reading it also, right, like here Chinese leaders, especially current paramount leaders, and then we'll be taking out some of the most important point in the form of the notes also, so that you could have an idea that while you are reading the newspaper, so these are the notes actually that I have taken from this particular editorial only, and then I have created actually this particular question also, where what you need to do is that you'll have to read this question, understand, and then out of this particular editorial you'd be able to write an answer also, right. So this is an initiative by me, so that I just want to help the Hindi medium aspirants जो अपने मीडियम को हिंदी मीडियम से इंग्लिश मीडियम में शिफ्ट करना चाहते हैं, जिससे कि इनके सिलेक्शन के चांसेस और ज़्यादा एनहांस हो सके, राइट. अभी मैंने देखा ऑन दी ललन टॉप विच इज़ very influential YouTube channel. Okay, so Hindi medium students were crying. They were crying over the CSAT and the kind of question that were being asked, right? So reading comprehension and English. So instead of crying, see, my sympathies are with all of the Hindi medium aspirants, because I love them, I support them, and this is the particular channel that I have made for them only, right? So that they could enhance the chances of getting into the civil service examination manifold. So if you start preparing, so suppose I'm speaking, right? So mostly I'll try to speak in English, and wherever it will be utmost necessary to explain the things into Hindi, that's what I will also do, right. So listen things more and more to English, and let yourself get evaluated by default that how much are you able to understand, right. So suppose if I'm speaking like almost everything in Hindi, if you are able to understand 40 to 50%, that means you have a good chances of changing your medium from Hindi medium to English medium, because you're going to get the best of the best study materials. Like suppose we are reading the Hindu newspaper, right. So if you go to any Hindi medium coaching, what they do, that they translate these particular editorials, okay, from English to Hindi, and they will give you that, right. So these kind of things never going to serve that purpose, because you'll have to have some kind of handy knowledge, right, so that you can change your medium from Hindi medium to English medium and could have a kind of functional knowledge, right. I'm not saying that Hindi is bad or good. I'm not talking about anything with respect to Hindi, because Hindi is our language, okay. Uttar Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Rajasthan, Odisha, West Bengal, right, these are the states where mostly somewhat Hindi speaking belt we can call, right. So most of the students appear in the civil service examination from this particular belt only, right, from these states only. So if you people start preparing for the civil service examination in English medium and can understand and have the access of the Hindu newspaper, like you can read it on your own, you have to develop your capabilities, right, or capacities or understanding or skills of learning English, writing English, speaking English, reading English, and then writing also in English, right. It will definitely help, and it will increase the number of the civil services aspirants who appear into the examination from Hindi medium to manifold, right. Right now mostly like 20 to 25 students of the Hindi medium, they get into the civil service examination, and very few, like 1 or 2 or 3, the guys manage to secure the IAS or IPS ranks, right. The rest of them, they go IRS and all these kind of things. So when you guys can prepare for the NEET or prepare for the IIT, right, or prepare for the all all kind of good national level competitions, why not to prepare for the civil service examination in English medium, right? So that your chances of getting into the civil service examination could get increased manifold. And this is what my motto is, and my making this YouTube channel for the Hindi medium students helpful, right? So let us get started. I will be reading it a bit and I will be explaining you, right, so that you could have an idea. And after explaining this, I will be telling you that from how I am taking the notes out of this and how you can write the answer also, right? So it is going to be a very holistic preparation from this particular editorial, right? So today is the 8th of August 2023, and this is the Hindu editorial, China's worldview. So China's worldview means what? Worldview means what? How China views the world, right? How China views the world. How China views the world means what are the views of China, how China sees the world, right? How China look at the world, right? So this is the meaning of the China's worldview. So what is the world view of the China? What are the views of the China on world, right, of today's, right? And its postulate. So this is the its. So its is getting related to the China. So means how China postulates means China has believed something in himself or in herself, that okay, this is what we believe and it should be, it should be running in the entire world because we believe that this is true, right? So this is a kind of thinking, okay, of right and wrong, right? So this is how China postulates or certain kind of theories that it makes for itself, right? And a reality check. So here Mr. M.K. Narayanan is doing the reality check of what China postulates and how it views the words. Is it really correct or not, right? So this is what we are going to discuss in this reality check round, right? So you can just take it like a big boss where some kind of reality checks are going on, right? So let's get started. So here is like Chinese leaders. So just listen it in the form of a story. Just enjoy listening English, like whether you want it or not, but just give yourself a little bit of room so that you could get habituated into listening English more and more, right? So this will be definitely helpful for you, right? So let's get started. So Chinese leaders, especially current paramount. So what is the meaning of the paramount? Paramount means something, means there is nothing beyond that. Like he's the supreme leader, right? So who is the supreme leader in the China? Mr. Xi Jinping, right? So Chinese leaders, especially current paramount leader, Mr. Xi Jinping, constantly means continuously. You don't have to make any notes, right? You don't have to make any notes. You don't have to write even a single vocabulary on a piece of paper. Just listen to it and let it go into your mindset, right? And then you see that how much you will be feeling a little bit different and you'll get motivated, right? You'll get motivated also to start preparing for the civil service examination in English medium also. So the Chinese leader, especially means the most supreme leader in the China was Mr. Xi Jinping. So constantly means continuously. He is referring, means he is actually telling something. What it is telling? That changes unseen in a century. So changes means the kind of changes. Unseen means something that has not been seen so far in a century. Means in the past, like means in this 21st century. So in this 21st century, some kind of changes that has not been seen before. This is what being talked by. This is what being talked about Mr. Xi Jinping, right? So here we are going to take the notes of this, like changes unseen in the century. Now, if these kind of changes has not been into this particular century, then what are those changes basically, right? So here the meaning is like implying. So implying means, yeah, it means that, okay, that is, okay, and explaining further. So implying that the decline of the West promoted rules-based order is inevitable. So he said that whatever the US and its allies, the kind of rule-based order that they have made or set up or established a long years back, like, after 1945, even after the World War II. So that particular rule-based order, it is bound to decline, inevitable, right? So actually this particular rule-based order is going to be declined. Why it is going to be declined? Because China is promoting the new world order, right? Because China is promoting the new world order, and that new world order is set to prevail. Means that world order will work now over the West already set up, right? Over the West, the order that West has already set up, that will decline, and the China's world order now gonna be prevail over it, right? So here implicit also. So implicit means something which is there inside into it, right? So implicit also is that a Chinese driven word is better suited to a world defined by disorder, asymmetry and fragmentation. So what China is saying, that why my world order will work on or above, over or above the US or the West world order, because the reason is implicit. Why? Because it is better suited for the world. Means because it is going to be very beneficial for the world. Okay, because United States world order is defined by, because it contains like some kind of disorder is happening, because United States of America has gone to the Afghanistan, okay, and they have retreated from there, okay, and left the Afghanistan to its just kind of luck. Okay, and then the Taliban actually took over, right? So what has happened to that? So there are kind of disorder. This order is prevalent when the US is ruling the world, right? And asymmetry means there is no kind of equality kind of things, right? So only one country is going, and US just want to try all the contained countries, right? US try to contain all the countries, right? And fragmentation means there is no unity among all the countries in the world, right? So these are the negative points. These are the negative points in the US or the West rule based order, right? And what China is doing, actually China is saying that these things will not be there, from here to here these three things will not be there in the world order that China is planning to offer to the world, right? So this is what the meaning of this. So here we can see that the story is going between the rivalry of the China and the United States of America, right? So here what we understood is that, like, so we can easily understand that, struggle for the future dominance, like who is going to dominate the world, US or China, right? So this is the international relation topic which is mentioned in the general studies paper 2, right? So here, changes unseen in a century. So what is the meaning of the changes unseen in a century? Means some kind of changes that are going to happen which has not been seen before into this century. This is what the China's Xi Jinping thought. Means the Xi Jinping, who is the premier of the China, in his thought, this is the main, means underlying, means most important principle is this, that changes unseen in history. So he is going to offer something like this, and this presupposes, means this changes unseen in a century, it is going to presuppose, means something that you have already believed, right? That the struggle for future dominance, means this thought is related with the struggle for future dominance. Means dominance means who is going to be having more power. So that is what we have copied from here, struggle for future dominance, right? And now if somebody is struggling, right, to dominate the entire future, means the time that is going to come, so who is going to hover around that, whether it is going to be China or the United States of America, right? So it revolves around not merely military securities, means if you really want to dominate the world, so it is not that only you should be militarily superior, right? Means your military superiority or security should be at best. No, this is not alone going to work. So what China is saying, that along with that, means also technological development is required, the cultural development is also required, and biological aspects are also required. Biological means some kind of weaponizations, okay, the atom bombs, the nuclear bombs, these kind of bombs and kind of military setups and establishments where you should grow like leap and bounds, that is also required. Means like if you are militarily superior, that is not required. Means that is not only desirable, you need certain more kinds like technological development, cultural development, biological aspects kind of development, that China, that given China's rise, means when the China is rising actually, so the technology actually, means China is developing based on the technology also, right? So actually the growth that China is witnessing, it is accelerated by the technological development that has been witnessed into the China, right? And shaped by its economic strength. So China's economic strength is very, very high because China is very, very robust economy these days, right? And demographical potential. Demographic potential is also there because means very less number of people are there, in the below actually, we can say the BPL, below poverty line kind of things, right? So people are not that poor in the China if we compare it with the India, right? So these kind of things, means collectively 1, 2, 3, 4, these kind of points now. So what it said, that its success is inevitable, right? So success of China is bound to happen. Means like, everybody has to die one day, right? Everyone has to die one day, right? So that is what the China is going to be successful. That is inevitable, right? So this is the meaning of the inevitable, right? So this is how you should understand. And here what I've written, that military security is required, okay, but along with that, technological, cultural, biological aspects, economic strength, and the demographic potential is also required, right, in order to succeed and to dominate the world. Okay, so this is going to be the introduction we can read, right? Now here, what China is saying, that the US as the main threat. So China sees US as its main threat. Now, the current crop of Chinese leaders. So what is the meaning of the current crop here? Is it related with something agriculture? No, it is not like that. So current crop of Chinese leaders is that, like, if we talk about the current crop of Indian leaders. So who are the current crop? Means in the present time, the youngest leadership in India, like Mr. Sachin Pilot, Gaurav Chadha, Arvind Kejriwal, right? So these are the young leaders who have just gotten into the politics and they are making wonderful, leaps and rapids, right? So the current cost means in China, the leadership which is at the current, which is at the present, who are the younger, right? Who are the younger, what they believe is that ongoing threats to China, means there are so many threats to China actually, but what remains the main threat? So that main threat is the United States of America, right? So they hew to the view that growing polarization within, so they see that, means these scholars, means this current crop of Chinese leaders, they see that there is a polarization happening in the happening in the United States society, like in the US society, like black and white, and some people are getting, actually agreeing and disagreeing over some of the issues. So that's what is being witnessed by the current crop of Chinese leaders with respect to the United States, right? And loss of power across the globe were impacting the US attitude. So loss of power. So actually, US is losing a lot of power across the globe, right? And I could give you an example of Afghanistan. So they had stationed their army in Afghanistan for quite a long time, spent a huge amount of money, right? And at the end, what happened? At the end, they retreated. Means they have taken all the soldiers away from the land of Afghanistan and left the Afghanistan on the mercy of the God of the Taliban. And Taliban took over, and now see the pathetic state of the women and all these kind of things happening by, right? So that is what in the entire world it was recognized that the US is not that capable to topple the government, right? Or to bring the democracy in the states like Afghanistan or something like this. So that is why United States of America is losing the power across the globe. So this impacting basically US attitudes. Now with the kind of attitudes that earlier US used to have and used to dictate the peace and to tell the terms and the regulations and kind of things, which right now US is not in a position of, right? So these kind of things are causing the tension between the US and China. Why these kind of things are basically causing the tension? Because United States of America's power is decreasing in proportion to the China. So that is why these both countries looking at each other at the loggerheads, that who want to dominate the world, right? So this is what the meaning of this is, right? So in turn means, in turns we're going to see that. So it had led to a marked shift in the US. So that is why. So in turn means here, like, that is why it had led to the marked shift. Means US behavior has changed quite a lot, right? Because of these kind of things. And now, and if the US behavior or the attitude is changing, then it should be reflecting somewhere. So how it is going to reflect? So it is going to be reflected with respect to the China, right? So from earlier, US's policies towards the China was engagement and partial containment. Means US want to engage with the China, means want to trade with the China and want to be at the same forum for quite a long time, right? And to discuss things, okay, which were contagious kind of things. And there was partial containment, means not the full kind of, means we don't have to stop the China, we don't have to completely clutch up the China. It was not the approach of the US. But because since the China is rising so fast, so US now saying that to one of all out competition with China. Now US has come in full open and saying that we are going to compete with China and not letting to take the power kind of, power kind of handle that we had earlier, right? Because we are the superpower. So that kind of gauge we're not getting to get or hand over to the China, right? So that is why it is a full wall kind of a competition, right? So that is why protectionist kind of, protectionism, which was applied by whom? Applied by Donald Trump when he was in the power, right? So these kind of things are happening because of the global influence. So means US and China both want the global influence, right? So the war in Ukraine talk of an increasing divide between democracies and autocracies, right? So what are democracies? United States of America, France, okay, France, United Kingdom, India. So these are the democracies. And autocracies are what? China, Russia. These are the autocracies. They look like democracy, but they're actually not the democracies, right? So what is happening? The war in the Ukraine is happening, right? So it has actually divided. It means all the countries which follow the democracy and other countries which follow the autocracies, right? For forging new security partnerships such as AUKUS, Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, and the Quad, Australia, India, Japan, and US. So US is now so desperate to contain China that it started making these kind of, partnership or relationship with the AUKUS, So US has created AUKUS, okay. So see the fear of the United States of America, right? So that is how you should try to understand, gaze a little bit inside that what the actual, author wants to convey to us, right? And then make the Quad also. So now when US is making all these things, right? So these are the symptoms of this malaise, that yes, something is not going well into the United States of America, right? So now it is the turn of the China. So it will also retaliate something, right? So China also had increased concerns that the Ukraine war could lead the US to be more assertive on Taiwan. So what happens that China is saying that the US is not directly involved in the Ukraine-Russia war, but it is supporting wholeheartedly, right? And Taiwan is also a very kind of, we can say very important issue with respect to China. So China is thinking that now, since Ukraine war is happening with the Russia, so US is so interested into that, though it is not directly involved into that. But when it comes to Taiwan also, so US is going to show the same interest into that. So that is actually threatening or upsetting the China also. So in retaliation to that, what China is doing that it repost, means it is giving the reply. Repost means giving a reply, right? So in reply to making these AUKUS or Quad, what China is making? Global security initiative, right? So it is enlarging, basically means adding more members into that, right? And further expanding the China-led Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Means in SCO also, China is trying to include more and more members to its side so that it could also become more powerful with respect to the power of the United States of America, right? So it has made me see US made AUKUS and Quad, and China made GDI and SCOs, right? So China's scholars means further believe that the world has currently entered an era of polycentric competition and cooperation. So poly means many. So here the poly means many. Okay, centric means centers. So earlier United States of America used to be the only power center in the world, but now polycentric means many centers of the power have emerged in the world, right? And then now the competition is happening among them, and at some point in time the cooperation is also happening. This is what is being believed by the Chinese scholars, right? So this is how you should try to listen and understand and enjoy listening, right? So here, up to here, we're going to take the notes, right? So what is the US mentioned? Growing polarization within the US, right? We have just said. And the loss of the power. So how the loss of the power of the United States of America is happening? Because of the US attitude. So here you can add the Afghanistan example, right? What was the earlier policy of the China? Engagement and partial engagement with respect to China. Now all out competition with the China, and war in Ukraine is happening. So divide between the democracies and the autocracies is happening, right? Following of new security partnerships. So AUKUS made by whom? Made by United States and this Australia, India, Japan, the US. This Quad is also made by. So in retaliation with that, what happened that China is also saying that I am also going to enlarge the global security initiatives, right? And China led Shanghai Cooperation Organizations, more members are going to be added into that, right? So China's scholars are telling that here is polycentric competition and cooperation. So this is a very important term. If you use it while writing the answers, it is definitely going to fit you huge marks, right? In West Asia also, US used to dominate previously. So how? Let us going to see that, right? So here, according to China, the US was unprepared, however, for a shift of this nature, and already the consequences could be seen, as for instance in West Asia. So what happened in the West? So actually China is saying that United States of America was unprepared for these kind of results that are witnessed by him, right? That are witnessed by it, right? So what are those? So one example is from West Asia. So what happened here? As in many areas of the US dominance place. So earlier US used to dominate the West Asian region, right? Now China was displacing the US. So while China was displacing the US was unprepared, right? Unprepared or unaware quietly, right? What happened that in the West Asian, that Iran and Saudi Arabia truce. So truce means bringing peace, okay, and stopping the war. So basically China's initiative. So China took the initiative and brought some kind of truce or peace into the Iran Saudi Arabia, right? So whatever the issue was there, so it was brought to the peace by the China's initiatives, right? So it was an indication basically that earlier it was the influence of the US here, right? But that is now declining. That is now on wane. That is mean it is on the declining side, right? So that the China was gaining in strength in the regional and global sweepstakes, right? So this is what the in the in the West Asia, earlier US used to dominate, but now who is dominating? China is dominating, right? Because these kind of initiatives are being taken by the China. So here China's influence in the meantime had grown. So in this period China's influence has grown. It has increased. It has increased the power, the influence, right? According to the Chinese sources, means whatever the Chinese sources are saying, okay, in quite a few international organizations such as WTO, right, means World Health Organization. So in the World Health Organization, China started funding more. Okay, so it is stature, right? So actually its stature, its influence is getting increased into the international organization. In not all of them, but yes, in few. And what is those few? World Health Organization is one among them, right? So it had also succeeded in binding as many countries as possible to Chinese system, right? So it has tried to convince many countries to come to Chinese fold, means to understand and be, kind of friend with the China, right? And what are the norms of the China, the kind of standard that China follows. So all the countries, means many countries are coming in terms with the China, right? So that is also a setback for the United States of America, because these countries are no more clinging towards the United States, right? And they're just drifting away towards the China. So that means the weight of the China is increasing into the international world order. That is why China is suggesting that the United States international word or rule based order is going to be declined, and it is inevitable, and the rise of China is also inevitable, right? So another set of claims is that the China has succeeded in having a decisive voice in various international standard setting bodies. So the international standards, we can take an example of UNSC, United Nations Security Council, right? So where China has the veto, right? So Azhar Masood, used to be one of the terrorists, right? So China has vetoed many times. So it has a decisive voice, means it has the capacity of changing the decisions single-handedly, right? So consequently, Chinese standard had become the staple for many countries, and together with its model of subsidized state capital, China was set to emerge triumphant. So what's happened that because of these, or kind of result that has come out of this, is that the China's standards has become like very mainstay. Like staple means like mainstay for many countries. It means many countries are abiding by China. What China is saying, they're saying yes, we are endorsing the China, we are seconding the China, right? And together what is happening, that the model that China is pursuing is that subsidized state capital. Like suppose what is happening in the Sri Lanka, okay, the economic condition of Sri Lanka is very bad. So China has that much muscle power, we can say, or like the economic power, that it can subsidize the entire country. This is the level of the China, right? So that is why China has emerged like triumphant or the winner, right? So see the China. Now here are some of the prescriptions for the China and reverses, means some of the setbacks that China has conceded in some time and how China can correct it, right? So leaving aside for the moment China's worldview and its theoretical postulates as formulated by Deng Xiaoping, right? Such as the four modernization, right, which paved the way for the China's emergence as an economic superstar, right? So what happens that, okay, for some time, let us read that what China think that how world should be, right? And what are its theoretical postulates, that what China actually believes should be true and followed by the entire world, right? So if these kind of things are actually formulated by Deng Xiaoping, right? And who has given the four modernizations player, okay? Four modernization players or pillars, you can say, right? And that China has followed, and that particular thing paved, actually given the way, okay. So this has actually given the way, and China has finally emerged out as the economic superstar, right? So now let us see the reality. What is the reality basically? So the reality that China confronts today appears somewhat different, right? So China's reality is actually little different than it appears today, right? The issue before China is not one of the decline of the US, right? So the main issue before China is not that the decline of the US is happening, as much as how China can possibly reproduce the mind-boggling growth of the first 2 decades of the current century. Okay, so means most important challenge before China is that because China has already witnessed a mind-boggling economic growth, that China really want to maintain it, because what China has did is over 800% increase in an overall trade volume, right? So 800% increase, right? And to maintain that is a big task, right? An unimaginable increase in GDP. So suppose if you are trading, if your trading system or if you trade entirely, means entire trade volume is getting increased by 800%, so you can not just easily imagine that how fast in the volumes your GDP will increase, right? So now China is on the top of the world, right? And lifting nearly 80 million Chinese people out of poverty. And so this is like an uphill task that China has completed successfully, that it has lifted off, means almost like 84 crore people, like 80 crore people, from the below poverty line. So now these people have become the asset for the China. They're going to work, right? They are now skilled people. Now means they start consuming more, so the production will increase more, right? So once the production will increase more, most factories are going to set up, more people are going to be employed, right? So people will have more money, more per capita income will increase, right? So people will start paying taxes, and hence the GDP of the country will definitely going to be skyrocketing, right? So China is definitely going to be skyrocketing and dominating the world, right? There is no doubt about it, right? So that is why there is a huge tension between the China and the United States of America, right? So policy prescriptions basically needed to maintain this kind of impetus. Impetus means the kind of inspiration that it has drawn from the earlier kind of growth, right? And the tempo of growth, means the way it is constantly growing, are nowhere in evidence today. Means it is in the form of the proof only available with the China. Okay, there is no evidence you can find in the entire world as the kind of growth that is witnessed by the China. Okay, so in marked contrast, means it is completely opposite to that. What's happening? Beijing's current economic prescriptions have led to serious reverses in recent years. Means Beijing's current economic prescriptions, they have taken a setback in recent years because of the corona, basically, right? So many of these policies stem from Mr. Xi's efforts to provide safeguard for his more orthodox version of communist philosophy, as distinguished from a market-oriented policy. So basically, Xi Jinping, he is shaping the policies, and his way of shaping the policies is more of dominated by the orthodox version of the communist philosophy, right? So he is actually trying to interfere into the market a lot, because more of the government control he wants over the economy of the China, right? Which is means distinguish, means different from the market oriented policy of the West, right? So where the market oriented policy means it is basically talking about the capitalism, right, where the free market economy is being. So if you say free market economy, market oriented economy, west way of economy, one and the same thing, right, accompanied by determination to increase governmental control in economics, right. So that is what I've told you, that Mr. Xi wants that there has to be more control in the economic realm, okay, economic sector, okay, and restrict the private enterprise. Means he just want that the all the private sector should not be participating much in numbers, right, and achieve greater rule by decree. So he's passing some harsh kind of rules and regulation. That is why the private sector is not able to grow as fast as it could be and has the potential to, right. So it shows that the orthodox, means orthodox or kind of negative or kind of these kind of attitude Mr. Xi is having, right. So the COVID-19 pandemic, which necessitated adoption of certain draconian measures, right. So COVID-19, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, necessitated, means made it necessary, made it mandatory, right, made it inevitable to adopt some of the draconian, means very harsh measures, okay, including an unprecedented 3 years lockdown. Means in China, there has not been a lockdown which was persisting for 3 years, right. So this has been there. So like for these 3 years, all the production, all the companies, everything was closed, right. So economy has to go down, right. Economy had to go down, right. So now has been responsible for several economic setback, right. So that is what I already explained, right. So apart from hardships, means people were like suffering, okay, there, and several laws enacted by Beijing to contain the pandemic have again adversely impacted the image of China in the eyes of the world, because the kind of actually policy that China was making at that point in time, they were very adverse, they were very against to the world players, right, who are investing, okay, who are investing like the Apple or these kind of things. Means they are investing into the China. So they were like quite unaware that, okay, means this is nothing kind of predictability, they can change rule anytime. So these kind of insecurities were there. So that is why the major players of the world, they're not going to invest into China, right. So hence prefer to leave China. So that is why these multinational companies were leaving China, being uncertain of what the future holds, right, because they did not know that what the future is going to hold, means which kind of policies China is going to make, right. So Beijing's crackdown on major technology companies. So Beijing's crackdown on major technology companies like the Apple and all these companies, right, and the real estate sector have only added to the concerns of investors already grappling with, means already fighting with, okay, with the loss of several billions of dollars in the market value. Means the real estate sector policies and the major technology companies policies, okay, so they have made very harsh policies, okay. So that is why these guys are leaving the country, because that they're losing, they have the fear of losing almost like billions of dollars in the market value, right. So that is why they're leaving, right. So the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping is making some orthodox kind of communist kind of philosophies, oriented, or the driven kind of actually policies. So these are not going to favor the China's growth, and it has just witnessed in the recent past, right. So if China is to try and outdistance the US in a period that Beijing itself affirms as featuring both polycentric competition and cooperation, Beijing will need to make several shifts and changes in both approach and policy, right. So what it wants to say that actually if China really wants to outdistance, means China just really want to replace the US, okay, in the same actually the time that is going on, that what Beijing needs to do is that it has to focus on the polycentric competition and cooperation both, right. And Beijing will need to make and it has to make several shift and the same kind of drastic changes into the approach, means the way they apply those policies, right, and the kind of actually policies they are making, right. Those kind of policies that they're making, they should be like in the favor of the multinational sectors, right, multinational investors, right. But if they are making it like very harsh on the real estate sector or the technology tech companies, right, so it is going to be firing back, right. So however, the odds are stacked against China. Means there are a lot of odds, means a lot of problems are just facing or just in front of China, right. So how China is going to deal with that, this is what we are going to discuss into this, right. So China's current GDP growth has declined around 3%. Means earlier it used to be 6%, so now it has declined to 3%, while China will need to more than double this figure to ensure healthy growth. So China has to achieve, now China is required to achieve almost 6 to 7% of growth rate, right, to ensure a healthy growth, right. Employment risks are there obviously, and right, and they are increasing also, right. Lack of employment, okay, so there will be lack of employment among the youth is no longer static. Means it is just cannot be shown into the data form, it is appearing into the reality also, right, that people are unemployed, okay. So an aging population, and population is getting old, and population is getting old in China, right. So this is what also we need to take care of that, because if the old people, so they cannot make much money, they cannot work for long hours, right, and they have to look after their family responsibilities. or the government needs to look after the aging population, right? So young population is already unemployed, and on top of that, this is like, aging population is also there, right? So China is like attacked doubly, right? Doubly. So adds to these concerns. So evidently means it is clear. Okay, evidently major shift and changes in both approach and policies are called for. So that is why major shifts are required. Like you have to shift the gears very quickly and change in the approach. Okay, means how you are implementing the policies and what kind of actually policies you are making. So this is what is required right now. Okay, to have a major shift into that, right? Including a new economic model means create a new economic model, and undertaking to raise wages means in that economic model there has to be talk of raising the wages of the people and pursue other economic and structural reforms, and wherever the structural reforms are required, just do that immediately so that the China's economic policy could come onto track, right? What China needs to realize is that it might need to come up with an alternative theory of modernity. So actually China would be requiring to come out as an alternative theory of modernity, reducing the role of the state in promoting innovation so as to bolster the economy. Means that is the same, that it has to adopt the free market economy so that the innovation could happen, okay, and the economy on its own come on track, right? That is what's happening in the western way of the economy, right? Okay, so if at all, so if the China is doing that, so it hopes to beat the west free market concepts and beliefs. So if China is doing that, so there can be a hope, there can be a ray of hope that yes, okay, maybe China can beat, okay, maybe China can beat the west's free market economy concepts, right, and beliefs. So the real question is whether China can indeed produce a model that can supplant the West's so-called rule-based international order, and create a better suited to fragmented world order. So, like, the huge question is that here, that is China is really competent enough, right, to produce such a model, that can replace, supplant means replace the West's so-called rule-based international order. Means, is it like real that China can make some of the wonderful and and long-lasting, sustainable, capable kind of international institutions wherein it can replace already the US, those kind of institutions that US has made, right? So is it real or not, right? So this is what you're going to say. Much would also depend on whether the Chinese view that the West is disintegrating is true. Like as the Chinese say, like as the China is postulating, as the China is saying, as the China is postulating or saying the word view that the US or the West is fragmenting, means all the NATO members are not supporting the US. Is it the real kind of thing or not? First of all, we'll have to clarify or interrogate into this one, right? So first, when we are clear that okay, if the West is disintegrating, only then we can think of that China should try to replace the international rule-based order that has been established by the United States of America. Otherwise, if the US is not, or if the West is not disintegrating, then the kind of entire theory that China is building upon is going to be collapsing on its own shoulders, right? Own shoulders, right? So what happens here is that in Chinese view that the West is disintegrated. So this is not true, right? Actually, we'll have to integrate, right? We'll have to see that, we'll have to check it, right? So the only purpose the war in Ukraine has served is to demonstrate that when push comes to shove, right? So whenever the threat comes to everyone, right? So the purpose of the war. So what is the purpose of the Ukraine war? Basically, we can have an idea that the war is happening between the Ukraine and the Russia, right? So now what it shows that, okay, what it shows, what it demonstrates that, what it shows that when the push comes to shove, right? Whenever the danger is coming, okay, towards the West, right? So what happens that a disunited West can rally its forces under the auspicious means under the leadership of the USA effectively and checkmate Russia. So whenever the threat is coming towards all the Western countries, then they get together. Then they come towards the US and they together stand and they can checkmate the Russia in no time, right? So this is what the US, so that means this argument that China is giving, that I'm postulating something of like that the US is disintegrating or the West is per se disintegrating. So this is not going to be true because it is being clearly evident from this Russia-Ukraine war that entire West is rallying behind the US, right? So that means the West is not disintegrating. It is like very much robust, right, in contrast to what the China is postulating, right? So it could be seen as a vivid demonstration of the superiority of the free will over managed system. So it can easily visible, right? So it is easily visible, we can easily understand, right? Very brightly it is showing that the superiority of the free will. So superiority of the free will means free market economy, that is the US economy, that is the capitalist system over the socialist kind of, because managed systems are what? Managed systems are like Russia and the China. So these are the managed system because they just pretend to be a democratic system, but they actually are autocratic, right? So that is what the managed system. So China is no doubt contemplating putting in place certain corrective steps. Means actually China is thinking to put in place certain corrective steps. Okay, Beijing's decision to appoint an acknowledged economist with a proven record as governor of the People's Bank of China. So People's Bank of China is quite similar like the RBI of India, right? So actually they are thinking, so actually China is thinking to actually acknowledge or to appoint an economist, right, who has a proven record, who has a very good record as a governor of the People's Republic Bank of China. So if these kind of intelligent people who have already experienced these kind of economics, kind of turbulent situations, so they will be able to help to boost the global confidence in China's banking sector, right? So that the other people or the player who are investors, okay, they can offshore, or they can actually now to come to China and invest into China also, right? So that the China's economy could get a boost, right? So it could be steadying in, slowly it will be moving very positively if this happens, right, during a period of uncertainty, and might have a favorable impact. So this, if this happens, then it will have a very favorable impact, like very positive impact, right? So the new Chinese premier Li Qiang is again apparently making serious efforts to reinvigorate, means to re-energize the private sector, right? So re-energizing private sector is also necessary here in the China to come out of the kind of economic quagmire it is into, right? So but it is uncertain whether the word means whether he would go so far as to convert China into a multi-oriented economy. So multi-oriented economy means mixed economy, right? So it is like not very much certain, not very much clear that they are going to actually enter into multi-oriented economy, right? The mixed kind of economy that India follows, the US follows, right? Certain kind of, right? So which satisfy the international. So actually these kind of economies, actually multi-oriented economies, actually satisfied or attract the international business community in any country, right? So all this is still history in the making, right? So this is yet to come, right? This has not come into the practicality or reality still, but it is just in the mind of the Chinese guys, right? So on Taiwan, so what is the issue of the Taiwan? Okay, so here what we have seen here, here is the Taiwan. So this is the globe, okay, is the China, this is the Taiwan, here's the US. Why US is interesting in Taiwan, right? Why? This is the China, this is the US, right? And here is the fight that's going on, right? So now as we can see that, right? And these are the international players, means most important international players. China, okay, is Russia, okay, and this is what? This is Iran, right? This is United Kingdom, this is France, this is Germany, right? This is United States of America, and here is the Australia, Japan, right? These kind of people there, right? So here the issue of Taiwan, like Bunko's ghost. So Bunko's ghost is like it is very philosophically somebody's writing. Bunko's ghost is something which is not real, but it appears to be real. Okay, bhoot, जैसे होता नहीं है, right? We have not seen, but we can sometimes believe something might be there, right? Some kind of demon energy was there, right? So the issue of Taiwan, like Bunko's ghost, also hovers over the scene, right? So between the United States of America and China, there is one issue with respect to the Taiwan. Notwithstanding current tensions and despite saber rattling by both sides, saber rattling means US and China both are saying to each other that we're gonna attack you, militarily, and then a nuclear attack will be there. So these kind of saber rattling means they are just inciting. Means US is trying to incite the China, and China is trying to incite the US that we're going to fight militarily or something like that, right? It is seen that a major conflict on the lines of the Ukraine conflict. So as the Ukraine conflict is happening, so on the same lines, this could be a major conflict if it unfolds, right? So now one that could impact both the fortunes of China and much of the world in the Asia Pacific region. So if the war between the US and the China is happening with respect to the Taiwan, right, then the fortunes of the China are going to be impacted very negatively, and the effect of the China's negativity will gonna spill over or trickle down in the Asia Pacific region too, right? So it's not yet on the miss. Still, we are not seeing that something of this sort is going to happen, right? So any such conflict would have a severe and deleterious, means negative. So any such conflict would have a severe, means very high on risk, and very negative impact will be happening on the global economy. So if like US and China are fighting over the issue of the Taiwan, then the global economy is going to be in the trouble, right? So notwithstanding this, means without this, neither the US or nor China can possibly step back from the issue of Taiwan. But even we are seeing that the risk amount which is involved is huge, right? It is going to impact the world economy, but still neither China nor the US, they are not thinking that to go back on these issues, right? On the issue of the Taiwan. So they are very contentious with respect to that, right? So one possible scenario is that it might induce more realistic efforts to define objectives of which Taiwan is merely a symbol, right? So here, right now, they are fighting for the Taiwan. Why? So actually, in this process, what is that one positive things that may come out is that there will be certain objectives, right? So those objectives will come in open and clearly define that what stakes United States of America is having in the Taiwan and what China is having, right? So then the world would see and get to analyze that, okay, this is the main issue, right? But right now it is just both are claiming, right, that we're going to help Taiwan, and China is saying that we're going to acquire the Taiwan, right? So strategic commentators believe that Taiwan is only one of the several areas where China and US will find themselves in conflict in the coming period. Means in the time that is going to come, like in the future, US and China will have many issues, right? Will have many issues, right, to contend with, to fight over. But Taiwan is one of them, which is most important, all of them, right? So finding common ground at this time would be important to ensure that matters do not go out of control, right? So at this point in time only, means until it is getting unfolded and taking a shape of a war, it would be very much late, right? Means it would be just going out of control. So still we have actually the time that US and China sit together and resolve the issue over the Taiwan, right? So this is how we have read and understood. I think if somebody has listened to this far, right, so kudos to your confidence and your patience, right? So listen to it, and these are the points that I have taken out of it, right? So you just read it on your own and then just see the video here and just try, and then just write it in the form of, like, introduction. Then you just add things into the main body, positive and negatives, and then you use the what conclusion, right? And you can send all these things onto the WhatsApp number that is being available on this particular WhatsApp channel, and I'll be evaluating and sending it back to you, right? So this is an English to English, completely English to English explanation, so that Hindi medium students could listen and could understand कि it is not that tough also, इतना भी tough नहीं है, right? So see you in the next video.